Good morning. Today is Wednesday. It is Tainis Esther, the 13th day of Adar. Today is the fast of Esther. And we are going to celebrate Purim tonight. Don't forget to come and listen to the Megillah tonight. And tomorrow, Purim Day, the 4 mitzvahs of Purim, listening to the Megillah and sending Mishlach Manas gifts of food to a friend, and Matanot Le'Evyonim, giving charity to at least 2 poor people. If you don't know poor people, you can send it through our website, chabad and we will give it over to an organization that feeds poor people. And the 4th mitzvah is the mitzvah of Mishta V'Simcha, having a Purim meal on the day of Purim, which is this Thursday. So we are in the middle of chapter 37. And the Alter Rebbe is talking about the importance of bringing godliness into the lowest levels of the physical world. And this is because in this world there is the struggle between the forces. There's the forces of evil and the forces of good. And there is the force that is called the klipas noiga, the shell of noiga that can be elevated and become pure. And that is all permissible things that are neutral. And depending on what we do with them, this is where they end up. If we take food, for example, and we eat it for the purpose of becoming strong and healthy and be able to serve Hashem, to study Torah, to do the work, to be nice to our spouses and to our children, and to raise them good. So everything what you use, everything what you do becomes elevated. And that's what Alter Rebbe focuses in today's share also. And that is that you have to give it everything you've got. When you pray, when you study Torah, invest in what you do, the positive things, everything, all kinds of energies that you have that you can use to do this, and then everything becomes elevated. That is why when a person has different abilities, he has to find ways how to use it out in a positive way to serve Hashem. You say there was one of the big tzaddikim that he used to live in abundance. He used to live, large. And the tzaddik explained that this person, this tzaddik, has an ability to use out those things into holiness. Therefore, he needs to live large because a person like that is able to elevate all those things, everything that he's able to do to serve Hashem. And that is the idea of today's shir, that we have to give it everything you got. Let's look inside, says the Alter Rebbe. He's talking about the material things. That when we use them out for purpose of Hashem, then the energy that is in there becomes elevated. Says the Alter Rebbe, now that one fulfills God's commandment and will with these objects is that he mentioned yesterday, like for example, the tzedakah that you give, or the esrog that you make the bracha on. הרי החיוס שבהם אוילה ומזבטל ונכלל באויר אין סויף ברוך הוא שהוא רצונו יסברך המלובש בהם. The vitality within them ascends and is dissolved and absorbed into the blessed Ein Sof light, which is his will that is clothed in the mitzvahs, the divine will that each mitzvah represents. So he says the energy, the life, the vitality that is in the physical things is now elevated, instead of being dragged down into the lowest, the dark places. And how is it elevated? Says the Alter Rebbe, me'achar she'ein shom b'chinas ester ponim klal lehaster oiro yisborech. Because in a mitzvah there is no concealment of his countenance whatsoever to hide his light, as we mentioned yesterday. Because what is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is God's will. It is God's desire. So there's nothing there that conceals. It is the inner will of Hashem, as we explained in length, that there is the external will and there's the inner will. Everything what exists in this world obviously is the will of Hashem. But what is the true will? What is the ultimate will, what Hashem wants? Hashem wants his desire should be fulfilled. So when you do a mitzvah with those things, there is no concealment of God's light at all. So this is with the physical objects. All of the material objects that you do the mitzvah with, the energy, the life that is in these objects, it becomes elevated. Now says the Alter Rebbe, there is also the energy that the person invests in doing the mitzvah, the person's energy. Because the godly soul, as holy as it is, the godly soul itself can never do a mitzvah without the partnership of the animal soul. And the animal soul, to which it takes a hand, a physical hand, to wrap the tefillin around your arm. And the same thing with every mitzvah. Says the Alter Rebbe, v'chein koyach nefesh hachiyunis abahamis, shebe'evrei gufo odem hamekayim hamitzvah, umislabesh gam kein b'asiyazu. Similarly, the power of the vitalizing animal soul clothed in the bodily limbs of a person who performs a mitzvah, likewise clothed itself in the deed of the mitzvah. So the energy that we have, that we invest in doing the mitzvah, when you eat for the proper purpose, when you put on tefillin, when everything what you do with it physically, you invest energy in this, and that becomes part of the mitzvah. And therefore, what happens to this energy? Thereby, it ascends from the klipa to be absorbed into the holiness of the mitzvah. Which is his will, and is nullified within the blessed Ein Sof light. Because in the mitzvah, in the everything what you do, in the action what you do, there is the energy that you do the action with. Now, this energy, where does it come from? It is energy from the vitalizing soul, from the animalistic soul. The animalistic soul, the animal soul that you have, was possessed by the klipas noiga. It was possessed by the shell by the other side. And when you use this energy, and you're doing a God's will with this energy, you are releasing this energy from the possession of the other side, and you elevate it into the holy side. Continues the Alter Rebbe. So he says, this is true, of course, when we're talking about physical mitzvahs that involves action. But what about mitzvahs that don't involve so much action? Mitzvahs like studying the Torah, you speak, saying the Shema every morning, every night, you're supposed to say the Shema Yisrael, Tefillah, the prayer. What about those mitzvahs? Says the Alter Rebbe, that even though they are not literal physical action, but the speech also is considered a form of action. Says Alter Rebbe, Av she'einon ba'asiyah gashmis mamish etachas mamshelas klipas noiga, although they do not involve actual physical action, which is under the dominion of klipas noiga, the physical action is under the dominion of the shell, the other side, which is called klipas noiga. Nevertheless, mikol makom, kaim alon dehiru lav kedibu dame. Yet it is an accepted principle that thought is not a substitute for speech. What does it mean? And one does not fulfill his duty of Torah study and prayer unless he actually utters the words with his lips. So when you study Torah, when you say the Shema, you cannot just scan the page and read the Shema. You're supposed to verbalize the words. When you verbalize the words, it is considered an action because you move, your mouth is moving, you're using the palate, you're using the 5 parts of the different to express the words. It is also accepted that moving one's lips constitutes action. And such action, as the Rebbe notes, likewise stems from the vitality of the klipas noiga. The action it takes to move your lips stems from this vitality, as the Rebbe, that is nourished by the animal soul, as does the actual bodily action spoken of earlier. So just like the bodily actions comes, the vitality, the energy comes from the klipas noiga, the same thing is the energy that takes to move your lips and speak. It says, Ki efshar hanefesh halikis devate bisvasayim upe veloshen v'shinayim agashmim ki im al yedei nefesh achiyunis aba'amis amalubeshes be'evri aguf mamash. It says the divine soul cannot express itself with the physical lips, mouth, tongue, and teeth, the instrument of speech, except by the way of the vitalizing animal soul actually clothed in the organs of the body. So therefore, when you use them for a holy purpose, you're elevating them. You're elevating this energy. You're releasing them from their domain and you're elevating to the holy domain. Now says the Alter Rebbe, the more you give it, the more you take out. You got to give it everything you've got. And the more you invest in studying the Torah, in praying, the more you're releasing energy from the other side, from the evil side. וכל מה שמדבר בכוח גדול יויסר ומכניס ומלביש יויסר כוחס מנפש החיונס בדיבורים אלו. Hence, the more forcefully one speaks words of Torah or prayer, the more of the animal soul's energy he introduces and clothes in these words. Thereby, he converts more of the energy of the klipas to holiness. So it's, what does it mean to give a forceful speech? It's not just screaming out loud, it is really investing everything. Your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. You're investing everything in when you speak the words of Torah. Then you're investing more of this energy in holiness. This is also the meaning of the verse, all my bones shall declare. Say it in the prayer of Nishmas. That's Hashem mikamecha, God who is like you. Which means that the words of Torah and prayer must be said with all of one's bones, so that as much as possible of the body's energy be utilized in performing the mitzvah. And now says the Alter Rebbe, an interesting thing. He says, the Gemara says that if a person studies the Torah with all of his, if you invest all of his 248 limbs, then he's not going to forget. So the Alter Rebbe is going to explain what's the connection. What's the connection with forgetfulness? So the Alter Rebbe says forgetfulness comes from the unholy side. The holiness is not forgetful, because holiness is you, holiness is connected, holiness is real. So What makes a person forget? When a person does something which is not investing so much, and he forgets. But when you study the Torah, while you study the Torah, you invest everything in this. You are releasing, you're weakening the force of the klipa, of the impure shell, which is the source of forgetfulness. And you're bringing this energy in the study of the Torah, investing everything of this energy into the study of the Torah. And that, says the Alter Rebbe, this is what it means, that when you invest yourself into the study of the Torah, you don't forget. Says the Alter Rebbe. This is what our sages of blessed memory have said. If the Torah abides in all the 248 limbs, it is preserved in your memory. Otherwise, it is not preserved. So he says, Ki ashikcha imiklipas aguf v'nefesh achiyunis abahamis. Because forgetfulness in the matters of Torah stems from the klipa of the body and vitalizing animal soul. That is derived from klipas neiga, which is sometimes absorbed into holiness. When it is absorbed into holiness, there is no longer any cause for forgetfulness, because you're investing everything into the holiness, and holiness is one with Hashem. This is accomplished when one weakens their power, the power of the body and animal soul, applying all their strength to the holiness of Torah and prayer. So this thus is the meaning of the aforementioned quotation, that when one involves the energy of all his 248 limbs in Torah study, it is preserved in his memory, because the klipa that causes one to forget has been weakened. And what is left? The holiness. So that's the end of today's lesson. So we got to give it everything you've got, everything we do. We're going to do now the mitzvah, the Purim, and we do it with all of the energy, as we learned in last night's class, the Torah studies, that we give it everything. That's what on Purim we got. We connected with Hashem with our own way, in our own way. We're investing everything. We were ready to give everything up for Hashem. And that is the holiness, the specialty of this day, of Purim. Because we are so connected to Hashem, that's why Hashem connects similarly to us in that way. Everything we ask Hashem of Purim, and Purim, is fulfilled. So let's take advantage of this special day, doing the mitzvahs and celebrating. And B'ezrat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow morning. All the best. And don't forget to share, subscribe, and invite friends to join us for this year. All the best.